Xavier sat sadly in his house, sorting through his dad's belongings after his recent passing. Suddenly, 5 men in black suits barged in. The apparent leader stepped forward, stating, "Pack your things, you're coming with me." Perplexed, Xavier confronted the man, questioning, "Are you lost? How can you just barge into someone's house like this?" The man retorted coldly, "I don't feel the need to explain myself to others." Snapping his fingers, another man presented a file. He read, "I, Isaac Henshaw, promise to repay the $5 million borrowed from Mr. Hunter, with a 50% interest. In case of non-payment, my fingers will be severed. Should anything happen to me, my son, Xavier Henshaw, is obligated to work for Mr. Hunter until all debts are settled." Annoyed, Xavier inquired, "What is that supposed to mean?" The man reading the file explained that Xavier's dad owed Mr. Hunter, gesturing towards the man who snapped his fingers. And as he read, Xavier would have to work for Mr. Hunter until he had settled his dad's debt. Xavier adamantly refused, stating it was his dad's debt, not his. Hunter remarked, "You are stubborn, I see." Signaling his men, they lifted Xavier, carrying him outside to their car. Xavier, resisting, kicked his feet and continued hitting them in an attempt to break free. They ushered him into the car and drove to a mansion, presumably belonging to Hunter. Exiting the car, Xavier noticed he wasn't restrained and attempted to escape. However, Hunter swiftly grasped the back of his shirt, pulling him back. With ease, Hunter lifted him onto his shoulder and nonchalantly carried him into the mansion, indifferent to Xavier's desperate protests. Entering the mansion, maids and servants bowed to Hunter. Upon reaching a door, Hunter set Xavier down, opened it, and pulled him inside. Xavier, wide-eyed, marveled at the vast room that dwarfed his entire house. Hunter informed him that this would be his room henceforth. Xavier questioned why he was brought here. Hunter's response was straightforward, "To work, of course. You'll be my personal servant. Only take orders from me, and don't let me catch you serving others." Xavier inquired, "What about my belongings? I didn't bring them with me." Hunter dismissively responded, "Those things aren't coming into this house. I'll get you new ones tomorrow." Xavier then mentioned that he needed something to sleep in for the night, and Hunter responded that he would instruct a maid to bring him some pajamas. Hunter concluded, "You start work tomorrow. Be the first thing I see when I open my eyes in the morning. You have the rest of today to process everything and prepare yourself." With that, he left, closing the door behind him. In his thoughts, Xavier cursed his dad for his gambling addiction, which had driven his mom away, and she hadn't been heard from since. He speculated that his dad likely squandered the borrowed money and abandoned him to deal with the debt. Xavier briefly considered escaping, but ultimately decided against it. Recently unemployed, he contemplated the prospect of living in a luxurious house with free food while working. Xavier opted to stay, willing to see how things would unfold for him. Midway through his contemplation, a knock interrupted Xavier's thoughts. Opening the door, he found a maid who, giving him a suspicious look, handed him a set of pajamas before promptly leaving. The pajamas carried Hunter's scent, suggesting they belonged to him. Enjoying the opulence of the mansion, Xavier indulged in a long bath in the luxurious bathroom, changed into the provided pajamas, and luxuriated on the expansive, inviting bed. It felt as though he could sleep there for a week without waking up. Deep in sleep, Xavier remained oblivious to the morning. Despite loud knocks on his door, it felt like a distant dream, and he didn't flinch. Hunter, finding the door locked, unlocked it to discover Xavier still asleep. Tapping him proved futile, prompting Hunter to resort to a somewhat unconventional wake-up call, pulling Xavier's pants sharply and releasing them. The sudden pain jolted Xavier awake. Astonished to find Hunter in his room, he inquired about how Hunter entered, as he had locked the door. Hunter replied, "This is my house, remember? I have access to every room." Xavier insisted, "I still need privacy." Sternly responded, "I brought you here to work, not sleep." Xavier retorted, "Then you shouldn't have given me this comfy bed." Reminding Xavier of his morning directive, Hunter said, I told you I wanted to see you first thing in the morning, and you're still here sleeping? Xavier replied casually, oh, that, I forgot. Hunter stated, you forgot? I'll spare you this time. You have 20 minutes to get ready. We're going out. As Hunter was leaving, Xavier turned to go back to sleep. However, Hunter, seemingly with eyes at the back of his head, warned, no more sleeping. You don't want to know what will happen if you don't get down in 20 minutes, before exiting. Fearing the consequences, Xavier hurriedly got ready and made his way downstairs. Though he exceeded the 20-minute limit, Hunter remained silent, ushering him to the waiting car. Expecting to drive, Xavier was surprised when Hunter opened the back door for him. Perplexed, he entered, and Hunter sat beside him while a driver took the wheel. During the ride, Xavier noticed the driver occasionally glancing at him through the front mirror. Arriving at a mall, Xavier anticipated having to follow Hunter around and carry his shopping bags, but he was mistaken. Hunter brought him there to buy new clothes, shoes, and other necessities. To Xavier's surprise, Hunter carried all the bags throughout the shopping spree, not allowing Xavier to carry even one. Returning to the car without carrying any bags made the driver give Xavier an even more suspicious look. Returning home, Hunter handed the bags to a maid and led Xavier to his home office. Indicating a sofa, Hunter instructed Xavier to sit. While he occupied his desk, engrossed in his laptop, Xavier asked, don't you have any job for me? And Hunter replied, you are on your job right now. Xavier inquired, how? But Hunter quickly silenced him, stating firmly, no more talking. As Xavier sat idly, he eventually fell asleep. Upon waking up, he found Hunter still engrossed in his laptop, with Hunter's suit covering him. Upon seeing Xavier awake, Hunter remarked, you really love to sleep, don't you? Xavier retorted, I wouldn't be sleeping if you gave me something to do. Don't you really need me to do anything for you? As Hunter yawned, Xavier hastily suggested, coffee, you need coffee, right? Without waiting for Hunter's response, Xavier swiftly dashed out. Entering the kitchen, a sweet aroma enveloped Xavier, and he realized he hadn't eaten since morning. Forgetting about making coffee for Hunter, he approached the maids cooking and asked if he could have something to eat. They promptly dished out some food, and still standing in the kitchen, Xavier began to eat. One maid suddenly asked, is there anything going on between you and Mr. Hunter? Xavier replied, apart from him forcing me to pay my late father's debt, there is nothing else between us. The maid remarked, I don't think he sees you as just someone owing him money. I think he sees you as something more than that. Intrigued, Xavier asked why she thought so. The maid explained that if Hunter only wanted his money repaid, Xavier would have lost all his fingers by now. Shocked, Xavier inquired if Hunter was truly that brutal, and the maid confirmed it, adding that losing fingers was one of the least punishments for not paying back money on time. Xavier, now apprehensive, looked at his fingers, fearing they might face such consequences one day. The maid reassured him, you don't have to worry about yours getting chopped. You are Mr. Hunter's special person. Xavier asked how she knew that, and the maid pointed out Hunter's unusual gestures, such as giving Xavier his favorite pajamas, personally shopping with him, and carrying all the bags. She concluded, if you're not special to him, I don't have any other explanation for that. Despite the maid's insights, Xavier remained skeptical, thinking that maybe Hunter was just granting him a grace period before the real challenges began. Fear engulfed Xavier as he heard Hunter's voice from behind, asking, what is going on here? The other maids dispersed, pretending to be busy, and Xavier hastily swallowed food he hadn't even chewed. Seeing Xavier eating, Hunter remarked, you didn't tell me you were hungry. Anxiously, Xavier pushed the food aside, stammering, I'm not eating anymore. Confused, Hunter questioned, why are you suddenly acting like this? Is something wrong? In a moment of panic, Xavier blurted out, please don't chop off my fingers. Hunter sighed, grasped the back of his shirt and pulled him to his room. In his room, Xavier persisted, promise me you won't chop off my fingers if I still can't pay back all the money. Hunter sternly responded, I will chop your mouth off if you don't stop saying nonsense. Who is feeding you with all this rubbish? Worried about implicating the maid, Xavier replied that he overheard it somewhere. Hunter clarified, "It's my dad who chops people's fingers when they don't pay their debts, not me." Xavier's fear intensified as he asked, "So I'm not safe?" Hunter reassured, "You don't have to worry about your little fingers. My dad already retired." Exhaling a big sigh of relief, Xavier felt reassured. Hunter asked, "Are you okay now?" Xavier hesitated and replied, "No, I feel like you're treating me too well for someone who is your debtor. Are you planning to do something to me?" Hunter smirked and teasingly responded, "Yes, you should watch out." He then started unbuttoning his shirt. Stammering, Xavier asked, "What are you doing?" Hunter, still smirking, replied, "Changing my clothes. What do you think I'm doing?" Panicking, Xavier quickly said, "I think I should leave now," and bolted out of the room. In the following days, Xavier obediently followed Hunter's requests, positioning himself in front of Hunter before he woke up and acting as his constant companion. Despite being present at Hunter's side throughout the day, Hunter didn't assign him many tasks, leaving Xavier mostly bored. One day, Hunter went out alone, leaving Xavier behind. Upon his return, he found Xavier mowing the garden. Hunter approached him, asking who had assigned him the task. Just then Eddie, one of Hunter's men, stepped forward saying, "I did, sir. I saw him lazing about, so I asked him to do this." Angrily looking at Eddie, Hunter snapped his fingers, signaling consequence. Eddie, understanding, promptly slapped his own cheeks hard, stating, "It won't happen again, sir." Hunter declared, "Of course, it won't." He then grabbed Xavier by his shirt and pulled him inside the house. Xavier pulled his shirt from Hunter's grip, expressing concern. "Don't you think you did too much out there? You're going to make him hate me now." Ignoring Xavier's remark, Hunter replied sternly, "Didn't I tell you not to take orders from anyone except me?" Xavier retorted, "He didn't order me. He asked, and I agreed. You always make me follow you around and do nothing else. You don't give me any work to do." Growing angry, Hunter questioned, "Is working all you think about?" Xavier replied, "Isn't that what you brought me here to do?" Hunter, frustrated, clapped his hands twice, summoning all the workers. He pointed to Xavier, saying, "This is your new working colleague, and you can use him however you want," then walked away in annoyance. The maid, whom Xavier had become close with, asked if he had upset Hunter in any way, and Xavier shook his head. While some workers were hesitant to order, Xavier, aware of his favored status. Others, fueled by jealousy over their close relationship, immediately started giving Xavier commands. The next morning, Xavier went to Hunter's room before he woke up as usual. However, when Hunter opened his eyes and saw Xavier, he loudly demanded, "Who allowed this common worker to enter my room?" Swiftly, one of Hunter's men dragged Xavier out. In the following days, Hunter ignored Xavier, even witnessing him struggle with ridiculous tasks assigned by other workers. Xavier, feeling the shift, couldn't bring himself to approach Hunter anymore, even though he had found himself getting comfortable around him. One midnight, as Xavier was preparing to sleep, having finished all the assigned tasks, he heard a knock on his door. Assuming it was another worker with more tasks, he sighed in frustration as he opened the door. To his surprise, it was Hunter, holding his stomach in pain, blood staining his shirt. Panicking, Xavier asked what happened, ushering Hunter into his room and sitting him on the bed. Upon raising Hunter's shirt, he discovered a significant cut on his abdomen, gasping in shock. Quickly putting the shirt down, Xavier exclaimed, "Why are you here instead of being at the hospital?" Hunter, seemingly unfazed by the deep cut, replied, "I hate hospitals. I came to you because I know you once worked as a nurse." Xavier asked how Hunter knew about his nursing background, and Hunter replied, "I know everything about my clients." Xavier sighed and quickly went to get a first aid box. Xavier came back with the first aid box, finding Hunter removing his shirt. He asked why Hunter was doing so, and Hunter replied, "To make dressing the wound easy for you. What are you thinking?" As the shirt came off, Xavier noticed not just a cut, but bruises all over Hunter's body, yet his face remained untouched and perfectly fine. Xavier questioned if Hunter had been in a fight, to which Hunter cryptically responded, "Well, you can say that." Xavier persisted, asking, "Why is your face perfectly fine though? I don't see any form of bruises." Hunter retorted, "Were you hoping for my face to be covered in bruises?" Xavier quickly clarified that he wasn't, but it was just surprising given the other injuries. Hunter responded, "They know very well not to even touch my face in any way, or they are going to exit this world in the most painful way they could ever imagine. Everyone knows my face is a no-go area." Xavier shivered and opened the box to start dressing the wound. As he busily worked, Hunter, seemingly unaffected by the pain, just stared at him. He then unexpectedly said, "I miss you." Xavier replied, "How can you miss a common worker like me?" Hunter countered, "You asked for this. I was only giving you what you wanted." That moment, Xavier intentionally pressed on Hunter's wound a bit harder, causing Hunter to wince in pain. "Ouch," Hunter exclaimed. Xavier retorted, "But you didn't have to ignore me like that." Hunter brought his face close to Xavier's and asked, "Were you hurt when I ignored you? Have you fallen in love with me? Do you want to come back to me as my personal person?" Xavier pushed him back, instructing, "Sit back and stop moving." Hunter persisted, "You're not answering my questions." Xavier remained silent until he finished dressing the wound, all while Hunter's eyes were fixed on him. Xavier looked into the box for painkillers to ease Hunter's pain a little, but there were none. He informed Hunter about the absence of painkillers and asked if he would be okay. Hunter replied, "I already have my painkiller here." Before Xavier could finish his sentence, asking where, Hunter pulled him by the neck and kissed his lips. Instinctively, Xavier quickly pushed him away and slapped him on the face. Realizing he had just slapped Hunter and remembering Hunter's earlier words about people who hurt his face in any way, he quickly stood up, gasping, and covered his mouth with his hand. Xavier, holding his slapped cheek, slowly stood up and asked, "Did you just slap my face?" His voice shaking, Xavier replied, "I didn't mean to. It was just a reflex." As Hunter advanced slowly towards Xavier, and Xavier instinctively moved back, Hunter remarked, "Do you know what I do to people who hurt my precious face?" Xavier mumbled, "I'm sorry." Hunter clenched his fist, making Xavier anticipate a punch, prompting him to tightly shut his eyes in preparation. Surprisingly, Hunter grinned, pulled Xavier by the neck again, and kissed him. Xavier opened his eyes and once again, instinctively slapped Hunter. Realizing what he had done, his legs gave up, and he fell to his knees. With his head down, he said, "If you want to kill me, please make it quick, so that I don't feel too much pain." Hunter, also going down on one knee, held Xavier's cheeks from under his jaw, pressing lightly and raising his head. He then said, "No one has ever slapped me in the face, but you have done it twice. What punishment do you want me to give you?" Xavier remained silent, and Hunter kept staring at Xavier's lips. Taking a deep breath, Hunter said, "I don't know what I'll do to you if I stay here one more minute," and then got up and left. Xavier thought Hunter said that out of anger, but Hunter had another thought. In the following days, Xavier avoided returning to being Hunter's personal servant, unsure of how to face him. Each time Hunter saw him, he glared while holding his cheeks, a clear reminder of the slap. The other house workers stopped giving Xavier ridiculous tasks, as Hunter had secretly warned them not to. Xavier assumed it was because they got tired of picking on him. One night, as Xavier headed to his room, he felt a hard push. The next thing he saw was a chandelier hitting the floor with Hunter beside it. Worried, Xavier rushed to check if Hunter was okay, but instead of focusing on himself, Hunter held Xavier, examining his entire body to see if he got hurt. Just then, Xavier noticed blood coming from Hunter's arm. Quickly, he covered it with his handkerchief and said to Hunter, "You should worry about yourself first." He then took him to his room to tend to the wound and asked, "You're always getting hurt. Why did you jump in to save me?" Hunter replied, "Were you expecting me to stand there and watch that chandelier fall on you?" Xavier began to speak, but Hunter covered his mouth with his hand, silencing him, and said, "You are mine, and I'm always going to protect what is mine, even with my life." Xavier asked, "Why would you protect me with your life? I'm just someone who owes you money and is working to pay them back." Hunter replied, "No, you are more than that to me." Xavier questioned, But why? You haven't even known me for that long. Hunter replied, we've known each other longer than you think. Xavier said, we have? Please remind me, but Hunter responded, you have to remember on your own. Xavier asked, why won't you tell me? However, Hunter diverted the conversation, suggesting that he didn't think the chandelier fell on its own, and someone must be behind it. Xavier inquired why someone would try to hurt him, and Hunter assured him that he would find that person no matter what. When Xavier finished tending to Hunter's injury, Hunter declared, pack your stuff. You are moving to my room. Taken aback, Xavier asked why, and Hunter replied, I have to keep my eyes on you in case that person tries to harm you again. You are always going to be within my sight from now on until I catch that person. Xavier attempted to explain that he didn't have to move to Hunter's room, but Hunter, unwilling to listen, asserted, don't try to talk your way out of it. You are moving to my room, and that's final. Realizing that nothing he said would change Hunter's mind, Xavier quietly packed a few essentials and followed Hunter to his room. When it was time to sleep, Hunter laid on the bed and gestured for Xavier to join him, tapping on the bed. Xavier, feeling awkward, said he would sleep on the floor. Without hesitation, Hunter got up, carried Xavier, and tossed him onto the bed, stating, I'm not going to do anything to you. Go to sleep. Xavier laid on the bed like a corpse, covering his entire body with a blanket and keeping his eyes wide open, while Hunter laid beside him. Glancing at Xavier from the corner of his eyes, Hunter mumbled to himself, what trap have I set for myself? Xavier, thinking Hunter was addressing him, asked, huh? And Hunter replied, nothing, just shut your eyes and sleep. Xavier tightly closed his eyes, attempting to sleep while holding a tight grip on the blanket covering himself. Hunter also turned to the other side, forcing himself to sleep. The next morning, Hunter woke up to find Xavier gone. In a moment of panic, he quickly got up and searched the house frantically, only to discover Xavier in the kitchen, chatting and laughing with the other maids. Hunter walked up to Xavier, grabbed his hand, and scolded, didn't I tell you to always stay within my sight? Xavier, taken aback by Hunter's reaction, tried to explain, but the words failed him. Hunter pulled him back to the room, seated him on the bed, and sternly said, listen to me, never leave my sight, do you understand? Xavier nodded, innocently asking, what if I need to take a bath or use the washroom? Hunter sighed in disbelief and entered the bathroom himself to take his bath. In the following days, Hunter kept Xavier by his side at all times. Despite not having identified the person behind the chandelier incident yet, and no suspicious occurrences so far, Hunter wasn't willing to take any risks. He was determined to ensure that nobody would harm Xavier. One night, Hunter was sitting on the bed, waiting for Xavier to join him to sleep, when Xavier emerged from the bathroom. Wearing just Hunter's shirt, showcasing his slender and smooth thighs along with his long legs. He asked Hunter, can I wear this? I forgot to take my clothes to the bathroom, and I saw it hanging there. Is it okay if I wear it? Hunter scanned Xavier from his head to his thighs and legs, slowly closed his eyes, breathed in and out, fighting inner demons. He then replied, sure, no problem. Just as Xavier slowly laid in the bed, Hunter quickly stood up, paced around the room, sweating within. Xavier asked if anything was wrong, and Hunter stopped, stared at Xavier, and said, I can't hold myself anymore. He went back to the bed and positioned himself on top of Xavier. Xavier was so surprised he couldn't move. Hunter moved his face to Xavier's neck and slid his nose all the way to the back of his ear. In a soft, raspy voice, he said, you smell so sweet. I want to eat you up right now. Xavier, nervously and in a low voice, asked, what are you doing? Hunter stared into Xavier's eyes, then to his lips. Gently resting his forehead on Xavier's chest, Hunter softly murmured, I'm going crazy. He lingered there for a few seconds before moving off of Xavier and laying on his side of the bed. He simply said, good night, and turned to sleep. Xavier laid there, processing what had just happened, even though, strangely, deep down, he was expecting something to happen. In the days that followed, Hunter always seemed to undress Xavier with his eyes. Xavier, in turn, felt his heart skip a beat whenever Hunter looked at him. Hunter received a call from his dad one day, and he had to see him. Unable to take Xavier along due to his knowledge of his dad's nature, Hunter left Xavier in the care of his men and departed, hoping to return as soon as possible. Several hours later, Eddie, one of the men, approached Xavier with a worried expression, sharing the news that Hunter had been in an accident on his way back and had been rushed to the hospital. Xavier's heart dropped into his stomach, and shaking, he implored Eddie to drive him to the hospital. Quickly, they both left. On the way, Xavier noticed that the road they were taking didn't lead to any hospital. Concerned, he asked Eddie where they were headed, and Eddie, now looking angry, snapped, "Shut up and sit back." Feeling scared, realizing Eddie had ill intentions, Xavier reached for his phone to call Hunter. However, Eddie swiftly grabbed it, warning him not to attempt anything foolish. Meanwhile, Hunter, at his dad's house, tried calling Xavier to check on him, but he couldn't reach him. Worried, Hunter called one of his men, to whom he had entrusted Xavier's care. The man informed him about Eddie taking Xavier away, claiming Hunter was in an accident. Instantly, Hunter checked Xavier's location on his phone, utilizing the tracker he had installed before. The moment he saw the location, he rushed out to his car, speeding up to get there as quickly as possible. Eddie drove to an abandoned warehouse, where he tied up Xavier and suspended him from the top of the building. Xavier attempted to shout for help, but Eddie, with an evil laugh, dismissed it, claiming no one would hear. Just as Hunter arrived, pointing a gun at Eddie, demanding Xavier's release. Eddie grinned wickedly, stating, "Just the person I was waiting for. I knew you would come." Holding a knife over the rope securing Xavier, Eddie threatened to cut it unless Hunter handed over the gun. Anxiously looking at Xavier, Hunter reluctantly passed the gun to Eddie, questioning why he was resorting to such actions. Eddie, filled with anger, retorted, "Because of you and your dad." Hunter pleaded with Eddie to leave Xavier out of it, emphasizing his innocence. Eddie, however, angrily responded, "My mom and sister were also innocent, but because of you and your dad, they lost their lives." Hunter, bewildered, questioned Eddie about his accusations, to which Eddie continued, "My uncle borrowed money from your dad and ran away. He was the one owing you money, so why did you guys have to target my mom? You kept threatening her and eventually destroyed the only little home we had, leaving us homeless on the streets. You stood there with your dad and watched them destroy our home. I even begged you, but you completely ignored me. My mom and sister got really sick, and since we had no money or home, I couldn't even afford to buy medicine for them. They passed away miserably, and I'm going to do the same to your lovely boy here so that you know how it feels to lose someone you love right in front of your eyes." Saying that, he cut the rope. Hunter swiftly clasped Xavier's hand, preventing him from plummeting. Suddenly, Hunter's father and his men stormed in. Before they could apprehend Eddie, a gunshot pierced the air, hitting Hunter's back. Despite the searing pain, Hunter, resolute not to release Xavier, strained to lift him. Xavier's grip weakened, and with tears clouding Hunter's vision, he warned, "Release my hand, and I'll sever more than just your fingers. I'll take your entire arm." Xavier fought to hold on. The men accompanying Hunter's father intervened, aiding in carrying Xavier to safety. Hunter enveloped Xavier in a grateful embrace, exhaling a sigh of relief. "What would I have done without you?" he uttered, before succumbing to unconsciousness. Urgently, they rushed to the hospital. Along the way, Xavier tapped Hunter, imploring him to stay awake. Tears welled in his eyes as he said, "If you make it through, I promise to fulfill any request without a single complaint." Hunter managed a feeble smirk in response. After successfully undergoing surgery, Hunter, appearing melancholic, was visited by Xavier. Upon seeing Xavier, Hunter questioned, "Am I a bad person?" Xavier swiftly responded, "No, you are not. Despite appearances, I've come to realize you're a sweet and caring person, quietly helping those around you." Hunter, weighed down by guilt, confessed, "But because of me, Eddie lost his family." Xavier countered, "Don't blame yourself. You were too young to understand what was happening." Hunter persisted, prompting Xavier to hug him and suggest, "If you still feel remorse, you can meet Eddie after you're discharged and offer an apology, even though it won't change the past." After a moment of silent repose on Xavier's shoulder, Hunter abruptly winced in pain. Concerned, Xavier inquired about his well-being, and Hunter admitted lingering pain from the surgery. Xavier moved to call a nurse, but Hunter intervened, expressing, "I think I'll be okay with just a painkiller." Xavier smiled and kissed Hunter on the lips. He then asked Hunter if he was okay now. Hunter shook his head and Xavier kissed him again. Hunter conveyed he still wasn't okay, and in response, Xavier gently nudged his head, remarking, "That's enough." Hunter pulled Xavier to sleep beside him, recalling, "Do you remember the promise you made to me in the car?" Xavier pretended not to remember, but Hunter pressed, "Do you want to break your promise?" Xavier, giving in, asked, "Okay, fine, what do you want?" Hunter straightforwardly stated, "I want you to be my boyfriend." Xavier, with a smile, insisted, "Get well first, then you'll get an answer." Hunter reminded him, "That's not what you promised." Xavier teased, "You already thought I belonged to you. Why are you asking me to be your boyfriend now?" Hunter insisted, "That's different." Xavier, still smiling, responded, "Still, get well first," and swiftly darted out of the room. Upon Hunter's discharge, his immediate priority was to visit Eddie. Hunter's father, fueled by anger and lacking remorse, sought to take action against Eddie for shooting Hunter. However, Hunter intervened, preventing his father from doing so. Hunter apologized to Eddie, acknowledging his regret for standing by and not taking action. Eddie, though, responded that an apology wouldn't bring back his family and silently left. Deep down, he knew Hunter wasn't at fault and the people at fault were his uncle and Hunter's dad, but he wasn't willing to come to terms with that. Back at home, Hunter once again asked Xavier to be his boyfriend. Xavier agreed, but with a condition: he wanted to know what Hunter meant by "we have known each other longer than I think." Hunter was surprised, exclaiming, "You still don't remember?" Xavier insisted he didn't and urged Hunter to tell him. Hunter continued, "When I was a kid, others avoided playing with me because of my intimidating dad. Parents warned their kids to stay away, leaving me alone. Until one day, a tiny boy came up to me and asked to be my friend. I had so many great memories with him." Xavier then recalled, saying, "Oh, I remember now. You're Butterfly Boy." Confused, Hunter asked, "Butterfly Boy?" Xavier responded, "Honestly, I was scared to play with you until I saw you running away from a butterfly. That's when I realized you were just a harmless little boy, so I gathered courage and asked you to be my friend." Hunter, surprised, remarked, "So you only asked to be my friend after I was chased by a butterfly? I must thank that butterfly then." Xavier laughed, adding, "You looked so funny running from that butterfly." Hunter, now that he'd shared the childhood story, asked for Xavier's answer. Xavier replied, "I wouldn't kiss someone I don't love." Hunter pressed, "So you love me?" Xavier nodded, and Hunter grinned, saying, "That's not the question I asked though. Will you be my boyfriend?" Xavier finally said, "Okay, fine, yes." Hunter kissed and hugged Xavier, saying, "I love you too."